very funny.
It's good.
So before we start, I want to present all your hard work.
Thank you
all of
so
your-
much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate
Charming this
it.
committee.
Thank you.
Great,
These are
too.
beautiful. Can't wait to get those in class. I love it. Thank you. Very, very thoughtful. It is the committee to be on, as you know.
Put it on that table over there.
Oh, okay, great.
The other slides are not as fancy, but I'm really quick to go on them.
Just have the necessary information.
All right, I'll get started, and then I'll just catch up. Whoever. So we did ask the building principals to be here as well, so that they'll be chiming in, and we did bring some of the materials that are used for OG and for Pioneer Valley and for foundations, so that if you wanted to look at the materials, that opportunity is available as well. And of course, Anthony is here. He's been an integral part of helping to develop our district-wide reading program, and particularly the AIS side of it, the OG, and the foundations. So let's start first by looking at the number of staff members, certified teachers, that we have in the district who are assigned to teach reading. So at Leftondale, we have 5 teachers, 3 of which are certified in reading, and 2 are special education certified, but have a plethora of experience in reading. And in fact, Mrs. Curiali, over the years, has been working towards her reading certification, and has many, many credits. Ostrander Elementary School, we have 4 teachers. 3 are certified in reading, 1 is certified in special education. Plattekill, 4, and they are all certified in reading. John G. Borden, 4 teachers, 2 are certified in reading, 2 are certified in ELA. And at the Wallkill Senior High School, we have 1 teacher, and she is certified in special education. So a little footnote here, our reading teachers and our special education teachers who are assigned to teach reading have been trained in OG and have their classroom teacher level certification, their classroom educator certification.
And just to add on to that, Iman, one of the reading teachers, at least a classroom level certification, one of the reading teachers at the elementary level has their associate level certification for OG as
Right.
well. So.
And our special ed teachers and our reading teachers at the elementary level have also been trained for foundations. Because we thought it was really, really important that they see what's going on in our tier 1 and our classroom programs, and that they understand what our classroom teachers are teaching, which foundations is a Wilson multisensory program. So it's very nicely aligned with OG, so they can build on those skills that kids are learning. So we have a large number of our students who are receiving reading instruction in our reading labs. At Leftondale, you see we have 105 students. Ostrander 98 students, Plattekill 101. And then at the middle school, we really have a very tiered program. We have Read 180, which primarily is special education students. And there are 28 students. MTA, which is the multi-sensory reading, 2 students. RAW is our reading and writing labs. That is taught by a certified reading teacher. Grade 7 is 32, grade 8 is 33. And then we have our ELA AIS labs that are taught by our English teachers. So the difference here, well, it's really not a difference. What I should say is what's the same here is that these teachers, minus our ELA teachers, are also certified in OG. So although they're using Read 180, they're also using Orton-Gillingham methodology and Orton-Gillingham sequencing if a child needs that. Same thing in our reading and writing lab with Miss Conley. She's a certified reading teacher, and she's also familiar and has been working with the Orton-Gillingham. At our high school, we have a special class reading, which is students with IEPs. And then we have MTA, which is that multisensory tier 3 intervention that is specifically geared towards Orton-Gillingham. So is our special class reading, but the difference is, you can see it's a much smaller class. The teacher's working more one-on-one with those students. So at the elementary level, we're gonna start off there. In looking at our programming district-wide, we did take a tiered approach. So our tier 1 is our broad reading program that all of our students are using in the classroom. So at the grade 2 level, we have Foundations, which is a Wilson Phonics program, and it's paired with Pioneer Valley, which is the comprehension part of that program. So it's a nice blend, and in fact, both sides, both Pioneer Valley and Foundations, recommend that you have these 2 different programs coupled, and that it's not just one or the other. Because students still need those other elements of reading instruction, such as inferencing, main ideas, the writing elements, not just the phonics, they need both. At our grades 3 through 6, we use HMH into reading, and I'll talk more about that program in further slides. We have been looking at Foundations for grade 3. So I'm gonna ask Anthony to chime in there.
Sure, so basically, because of the loss of instruction due to COVID, teachers felt like the students didn't have the access the previous 2 years because of the remote and the hybrid piece, that students are behind, so they're seeing that we may possibly need a level 3, which is grade 3, Foundations material to focus on those foundational reading skills of decoding, encoding, spelling, vocabulary, the root words, prefix, suffixes. So to bridge that, we are looking at, and I've been speaking to the 3rd grade teachers, saying, hey, do you feel that this type of instruction would be beneficial for 3rd graders? And they're absolutely saying, absolutely yes. They're working with interreading, as Mrs. Harrington said, which is HMH, but they feel at the 3rd grade level, they could couple and partner Foundations level 3, grade 3, with the interreading that they're using as their base program now, and it could work smoothly together. The nice thing about it is with Foundations, they have the K program, they have the level 1, they have the level 2, and the level 3. The interesting part is level 3 is the only level where they say that you need the prerequisite skills of level 2 before you go on to level 3. So the question is, right, that stems in your mind, well, what are we gonna do if the kids aren't ready for level 3? Well, it's nice because Foundations also has a multi-tier program, which is a combination of level 2, level 3, to get the kids ready and give them the prerequisite skills to be ready for level 3. So the kids that are going into third grade that don't have the prerequisite skills for level 3 will be able to access materials from level 2, so they get the prerequisite skills before they go on to level 3, even though they're in third grade. So they're gonna have the prerequisite skills from the K level, level 1, level 2, then they can access that level 3, and we're ensuring that the students are gonna be able to do that by purchasing these multi-tier kits for level 2 to level 3. They also have the multi-tier kit for level 1 to level 2 as well.
What's the projection of a child who's reading on a second grade level, but actually class-wise is a third grade level? What is the projection that we're looking at for that child? Where about do we think that child is going to start catching up?
So the research shows the earlier you can catch it, the better that student is, the better that chance that student has to catch up. There is research out there that says if a student is struggling at the third, like when they exit third grade, that they're gonna struggle throughout their school career with reading, right? So that's something that we're looking at is how can we front load and catch kids earlier so we could address it, so they're on grade level or close to grade level by the end of third grade, so they're not gonna struggle that whole school career.
Thank you.
And in addition to that, we also used an element of Wilson reading in summer school to help, like you were asking, Vinny, to close that gap. So Natalie, you wanna talk about the summer school?
Yeah, so just like Anthony was talking about that multi-tiered kit, we purchased those for summer school, knowing that kids last year coming off of, the remote learning might need that 2-3 multi-age kit. So that is what we gave out. We actually had another program called Ready to Rise, and that was, again, it kind of brought those kids that were a 1 up to a 2 and a 2 up to a 3. So that helped as well. So trying to supplement, because you couldn't obviously teach that whole entire curriculum and foundations in a summer program.
I mean, if you're looking at it from a comprehensive standpoint, the big picture, right? The programs that we have, the foundations through Wilson, is derived from OG methodologies, right? So we're training our teachers with OG methodologies and getting them the training, right? And now in the K2 program, they're using Wilson, which is derived from OG methodologies. So the terminology that the kids have from what they're hearing in the classroom to that struggling kid that is going to that reading AIS program is the same language. So there's a connection now to the pull-out services as to what they're getting for that intense reading instruction and what's happening in the classroom. So that connection piece is very important, right? And we're looking to, so we're doing a math pilot, not to go to math, but we're doing a math pilot. We're making sure whatever math program we're gonna pick has that connection to the intervention services to what's happening in the classroom. Because if there's not the connection, then they're working on stuff in isolation, which is good, but how can they apply it, right? We want them to be able to apply it and use it in the classroom. So we wanna make sure that that intervention piece is tied to the classroom. What we're seeing here with the K2 and even the 3-6, there's a connection to what's happening in the classroom with what we're doing with our ELA instruction and what we're doing to assist kids with reading.
What are we going to do as far as tracking? How are you going to track these children going through? What are we going to do so that we're following their progression?
So our reading teachers do progress monitoring on a daily basis for students who are in reading. And in our classroom, both Pioneer Valley and Foundations at K2 have benchmarks built in. And over the summer, we did a pre and a post. And then we made time for our teachers to meet with the classroom teachers, our summer school teachers, to hand off kids with that data, to say, hey, this is where they were in August. So that classroom teachers weren't starting all over again, because we don't want to waste time with that. So these programs, along with our district benchmarks and STAR, are an ongoing formative assessment so that we are looking at individual students daily across a wide array of formative assessments. And then our teachers are adjusting their instruction for those individual students accordingly. Now, our teachers did report back to us, and they're benchmarking at the kindergarten level and the first grade and second grade level. They're seeing great jumps with their students in foundations. And they're seeing those reading levels go up with their kids.
It's phonics.
It's phonics. It's phonics.
I mean,
So,
in
so
the
they
programs-
are seeing that.
And the programs have progress monitoring built into it.
Oh, wait, and
Right,
there's
so like the
screeners in it,
foundations,
too.
go ahead, Sarah.
There's screeners as well, so they can
Right.
see where what the kids need, right? So it's all differentiated, you know, for the students and what they need next.
Mhm.
You know, unfortunately, the rollout, and I'm still very proud of the district that we rolled it out, and then the pandemic hit. You know, so I think we will be seeing with students in class full-time, you're gonna be seeing your reading numbers probably go down, because in your tier one program, you're meeting their needs. And we have a very robust phonics component now.
Will the board ever see this as far as the tracking?
The data?
Yes.
Oh, sure, we can put that together, we have all that data.
I would think that that is all part of this. because,
Absolutely.
To be honest with you, and I know you know your stuff,
Mhm.
no doubt about it. But when you start talking about this right now, I think you can lose, because the board has no idea of this. And yet, we're the ones that are making decisions on these. So I think it'd be very beneficial if that we do something about the tracking and how to follow. Do you remember years ago, we used to, what's the term, adapt students' names out of reports, and you'd follow through, we wouldn't know what the student, who the student was, but you could actually see their progress, because now the board is reading it. And I would think that'd be a very helpful thing for the whole process. Because to be really honest with you, you know, you say all you want, the board will never have an idea of what you're doing.
And just so you know, Vinny, on February 16th, I'm gonna have 2 reading teachers come to present to the board on the OG training, how they use OG in instructional methodologies, and how that training's impacted, and then how it impacted the kids. So we're really gonna focus on those three questions, and they're gonna present to the board about OG, because we invested a ton of resources in OG, right? And it's a good investment, but it's nice for the board to hear basically the answers to those 3 questions. How was the training, what did you take from the training? How did it impact your instructional, instruction with the students? And how are the students benefiting from it, right? And so they're gonna have that information for you on the February 16th board meeting.
The only problem with that is, and please, no one talk about my age. I can't hear what they're saying anyway when they're speaking. To really be honest with you, I cannot hear you, and I don't think I'm the only board member, but I will admit that I can't hear it. If you want the board to really see something, they should have a workshop. We should have a workshop, just like we're doing here, because if we get engaged, we can hear one another, and we can speak. Otherwise, at board meetings, I think it's very difficult to do that. That's my honest opinion. Now, I haven't said anything to Kevin about this, or even, I don't want you to think this is a surprise, or I'm trying to do anything stupid here, but I think that would be the way that we could learn about what's going on. The presentation is all well and good. I mean, but if I have a question, I just think that the board should be more involved than just a presentation there. If you want to have a presentation after we would have a seminar on this and thing, I would think that would be the way to go. And those board members that want to go to it, go to it. If you don't want to go, don't go. But I'm saying there should be more to it than that presentation at the board.
Okay. So then if we look at our tier 2 interventions, and we all sort of touched on this a little bit, we talked about, our reading labs, and the materials in our reading labs, they are thing OG materials. They also have access to foundations, and they also have Pontus and Pinnell leveled library that they use in addition to those. And that's in our reading labs, along with in class, our teachers are using small group reading instruction. because we do know that all kids in the class are not on the same level. So they do have groups within the classroom where then they're able to differentiate. And then at our tier 3, students who need the most support, and it's been identified that it is specific to multisensory reading, then they are put in an Orton Gillingham reading group. And that is very structured and very specific and very sequenced. And that is what the reading teachers work on with the students. So just a little bit about those programs, and we already talked about it, but I did want to give you written information as well. So Foundations is a Wilson program, and it does teach the students decoding, spelling, and handwriting. We also use handwriting without tears, in a carefully integrated and scaffolding sequence. And the goal of the program is that students are working through these individual skills until they gain mastery. You don't move on to the next skill until you mastered the skill prior to that, because one skill builds on the next. And it's designed to be combined, like I told you before, with the literature-based program, which we have in our 3 through 6, in order to address the comprehension and the writing, because the phonetic program does not go into that realm. What is Literacy Footprints Pioneer Valley? That is our K-2 program. It's that coupled, it's that comprehension piece that goes along with Foundations. And it does do reading skills. It also does word study. And there is a writing component for everything that the children are reading. The lesson parts are developed around targeted skills, which are aligned to the state standards. Comprehension focuses with the literacy continuum, and the lessons are planned and delivered using student assessment. Throughout their reading, Vinny, you probably remember this when you were in the classroom, those running records with students. As a student reads aloud to the teacher has the reading selection in front of them, and they're actually able to mark down exactly what mistakes the student made, so that then they're able to diagnose what it is that the student is missing. So in the Literacy Footprints Pioneer Valley, there is a lot of one-to-one reading with students, and teachers recognizing what is that gap. Are students mispronouncing certain vowel sounds, and they're not able to access that word because they can't sound it out? Is it that they don't understand punctuation? So they're not stopping at periods, so they're just reading and reading, which then, of course, is going to impact their comprehension as well.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does the assessments involve any kind of like nonsense words and stuff? Because my children were able to memorize the sight words, and when any kind of reading out loud was occurring and the teachers were assessing them, they knew the words. And they can read anything in context that makes sense, but the nonsense words, where they had to actually pronunciate and decode things, was where their weaknesses and their dyslexia was identified.
So in OG, absolutely.
But would the
Absolutely.
Pioneer Valley and these assessments where the teachers are
I would have to defer, Scott Brown is telling me yes, that
Yeah.
there are nonsense
So-
words embedded in that.
Yep, all through the AIS program, when students get pulled out, that's what they're working on, that's part of the piece that they're working on, besides diagraphs and things like that. But the nonsense words, yes, it's a big part of both programs.
right?
So like when kids go to RTI now, that's the data we're using, the nonsense words, to track kids going forward. So
Okay.
we know,
And when did that change start?
as soon as this program.
Okay, so recently.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
And then with Into Reading, which is our 3-6 core program. And again, like Anthony stressed before, we will be supplementing grade 3 with Foundations moving forward. But Into Reading does have phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary comprehension. And teachers are explicitly teaching those other elements of reading, along with integrating listening, speaking, and writing. There is formative assessments and summative assessments with Into Reading, along with their technology components, their digital components, which is a big selling point for us, was that it is aligned with STAR. The systems do talk to each other. So when the students take the STAR assessments, and our STAR assessments identify the different standards and skills that students do not know, teachers are able to also identify different resources into reading, because the two systems talk to each other. And to say, okay, here's where into reading we have materials. Also, tied into that platform is Accelerated Reader, which is an independent reading program that students can use, and they read independent books, and they're leveled books. So students can pick within their level, teachers can stretch them a little bit, and maybe the beginning of the next level, if they think that's appropriate. And then throughout Accelerated Reader, students are answering comprehension questions as well. So before we move on, I know Natalie, you brought some materials. And Monica, you have some OG
Yes.
materials. So we'll start with Natalie and then we'll move on to Monica.
So we'll start with foundations. If you go into any of our classrooms, you will see these posters. And I was in kindergarten the other day with Mrs. Palin's class, and she has the kids go through each of these letters. They can name the letter, the sound, and the word that goes with it. It's quite amazing, and I have to say, she said that there's been huge growth in her kindergarten class with kids just knowing their letters and their sounds. Yeah, and they, I didn't get that part. They use this owl, the two, I couldn't bring one. There's a little one and there's a bigger one, and they use the owl to swoop through the words. It's very cute. Kids are all engaged in reading words. And then another big piece of the program is handwriting, which is something that is always needed. And you'll hear that in other districts as well, right? The teachers are always looking for handwriting, and they love this program. And it is remarkable. I mean, I was a kindergarten teacher, to see the handwriting that the kindergartners are producing, and this is totally helping. So they go through, they learn all the ways to write their letters, and they have these special boards that talk about the skyline and the grass line and the plane line, and it helps them with their formation. Oh, you got all my stuff out, huh? They're learning the vowels, the vowel sounds, and then they have these cute little desk charts to help them. And then another big piece of the program is each student has their own letter board. So it looks like this, and they can build their own words, right, using these letter sounds. And it's all teacher directed. They can do it in a small group or a whole group. I've seen it both ways, depending on their ability and their level. So I can leave that there for you to look at.
Like a lot of this board is out while the teacher is.
There's a little baby
instructing.
echo out.
Baby echo out.
Kids like work on it here, depending on the skill, you know, if they're doing apple app, they have to look for the A, they start doing digraphs, so that every student has their own as well. And then you'll see later, just, the lines, you'll see them repeated with OG.
There's a lot of connecting here between both programs. So the other program is the Literacy Footprints. And with that program, the Pioneer Valley Literacy Footprints, so that's more of there's a text level, depending on level. There's a instruction card for the teachers. It gives them the steps to the guided reading lesson or the small group lesson. You know, they review the text, there's a prompt, there's a discussion, they teach a new word, there is a phonics piece in here, a dictated sentence. So not only is it phonics, but it is comprehension as well, as Mrs. Harrington was talking about. So they use those. And then they, again, have these little letter trays. I will say that the kindergarten teachers love using the letter trays compared to these little flat, because of the dexterity of the kids, but they use the letter trays to build words, identify their letters and sounds, so these are very popular.
And is this district-wide in kindergarten, or is this
Yep,
just
K1,
excellent?
two. Yep, K1, 2. All of
Awesome.
this is K1, 2. I just happened to bring the kindergarten
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. But as long as it's happening at Plattekill and Leptondale too,
Yep.
that's great.
Yep, across the board.
So
Yeah.
we've seen, when we go through to do walkthroughs in the past,
Mhm.
we've seen, like, what you wanna do at times is go to like a grade level to do a walkthrough. So you see what they were doing, basically the same, I wouldn't say the same thing, but, each day if you went in and you see the three
Mhm.
third grade teachers doing the same thing because of curriculum maps and whatnot. What we're seeing now is instead of this way, it's going this way. So like if you go into a kindergarten class, they're working on the digraphs at first grade and second grade, so it's really building and extending our kids. So now we're hoping with the third grade piece, that just now is incorporated into it, and we're seeing that with the hopes of building a better base for not just the kindergartners, but going through, repeating the same things to stretch them out, because there are some of those gaps that we talked about. So it's pretty amazing, it's pretty cool to see when you get into the classrooms, and to see what they're doing. And they're not really they're talking this way, grade levels, but when you talk this way,
Mhm.
and to go into one classroom and then the next day they're reviewing diagraphs too, is awesome. It's really good to see.
And like Scott was just saying, what's really important is you're seeing it across the grade level. And these materials are, in some cases, the same or very similar, like the poster that Natalie started with. It's really, really important that if we're teaching students A, and that it sounds like apple, and that's the key word as a mnemonic device for students to recall what A sounds like, that all teachers are teaching A is apple. Because next year in second grade, if somebody teaches a different word, if I'm a struggling learner, I might think it's a whole different letter, but it's not. So having this consistency run through the grade levels helps those students build those skills.
But also focusing on the sounds of the letters, not just the
Absolutely.
names.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that common language is huge, because
Absolutely.
when we're having
Mhm.
like an RTI meeting on a student, then if I have multiple teachers in that room, a kindergarten and maybe second grade, we're all talking that same language.
Right.
And they're all doing the same instructional practice in the classroom as well, so it's not, we're talking the same language again, like I said.
And how's the focus on the sight words? I mean, are we still focusing on the sight words and the sight word lists, or are we more on the breaking it down and the decoding and the sounds and the
Well,
phonics?
I'm gonna-
Both.
Both. Both.
Because some of those sight words, they don't always follow the rule.
Mhm.
So sometimes you need the rule, and sometimes you just need to flashcards and just memorize, certain sight words. So it's both.
And we've talked about that as a group, like they're in the foundation program, they call them trick words.
Okay, right, the.
That's,
So
Mhm.
yeah, they're following that framework. Like mostly with anything with phonics, they're following the foundation. So whatever the language is in that program is what we're using K2.
so the nonsense, that's the trick
And
words.
those are the nonsense
That's the
words.
same
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
Because I just remember the list of the sight words.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And my kids were smart enough that they could memorize the sight words, and if you have a choice between memorizing the sight word, what it looks like and the shape of it, rather than sounding it out, the default is to recognize the picture of it,
yeah.
Right.
especially with children with learning disabilities.
Yeah, because the nonsense words helps us determine, did you know the rule?
Right.
And we're focusing a lot on that
Good.
rule piece now, which the teachers, they believe in, they're.
Absolutely, of course.
And they love it.
They do. So, like we said before, sorry. So for students who need that tier 3 intervention, specific to phonics and phonemic awareness, we have trained our teachers, and they are certified, our reading teachers, and Our inclusion, special education teachers are not certified, but were part of the 60 hours of training in Orton-Gillingham. And I'm gonna let Anthony speak about the Orton-Gillingham program.
Sure. So basically, the district saw a need for the phonics awareness and phonics skills that were lacking, especially for the students that have learning disabilities. And so we wanted to find a research evidence-based program, right? And so we reached out to Orton-Gillingham, which is well-known. There's also Linda Modell, which is out there. That's a well-known program as well. However, looking at what we were going to do for ELA, we thought that the OG tied closely to the foundations, and so that common language that Natalie and the principals were talking about was a better connection to say, hey, let's practice the skill in isolation, and let's see how it carries over to that practice. You know, our groups are really small for the OG. I mean, as you get up in the grade levels, not as many kids need it because the remedy works in the younger years. But
Hopefully.
if the kids need it, you know, we have it available all the way up through 12th grade. You know, we have a reading teacher, we have a special ed teacher at the high school that is going for her practicum. She's done the training, but she's doing the practicum piece. So she's gonna be classroom level certification for OG. We have reading teachers at the middle school level that will be classroom level certified OG trainers. And then we strategically picked special ed teachers that are in English classes to get the training, because they're in English class, they may need some of those techniques to help with the literacy skills of the English class. So they've all received the training. Now they're not going for the certification, but they have the training so they can take that skill and apply it in that English class at the high school, middle school level. And then our special ed teachers as well at the younger grade have all had it. The next cohort that we're looking to train for next year are gonna be our self-contained teachers in the 1211 and the 812, as well as teaching assistants in the lower grades. And even at the middle school and high school, there's not too many of them, but we wanna that's gonna be the next cohort that gets the training. Now, are they gonna have the classroom level certification? They could go for it, but it wouldn't be through the district, but they're gonna get the training part so they know the principles and the strategies that they could use with kids.
So Monica did bring some materials from OG to talk about a little bit.
There's not as many, fun stuff. I mean, they do use a lot of reading manipulatives. I'm sorry, my back is to you. So, I gave you a packet which kind of goes through the OG approach, but the second page shows you kind of like, the life cycle of a lesson. So, a lot of times there's cards and they start with the cards. So, the salmon cards, they'll just show, and the students have to say, you know, the letter, the sound, and they keep going, and if they don't get it, it goes into the back so that they get it again. And then the teachers keep track of who got what letters, because usually it's just a group of 4. It's a very small group, so they're able to keep track of those types of things. So the salmon cards are more of the letters. Then you go into some endings. These cards have digraphs, and they have to be able, some letters, you know, like C is K, ents, so they have to be able to say both the sounds. It's not just one or the most common that they've heard. Then it goes into digraphs as well. So all of these cards are used at the beginning of the lesson or at the end of the lesson. Something that's very important is that the goal is the students write the lowercase alphabet in this format, half of the alphabet and then the second half in less than 30 seconds. And we were surprised to see how many students couldn't do that in the beginning. And some students, it could take 2 minutes. And it's really to do a couple of things: the formation of the letters, you know, the sequencing of the letters, more automaticity of the letters, and then as they get a little bit better, you'll see instead of tracing, then they go to actually writing the letter, and then it increases. And then when they have to start making sounds, and if you'll see, these pictures are the same pictures from Foundation. So when they're creating a letter, depending on how like a G goes down into the ground, so there's the worm, so you have to go down. You start at the plane where the grass is. Some, like an H letter is a plain letter because it goes to the top. So it's nice that you're seeing it in both areas, and the reading teachers are very cognizant to make sure they're using similar verbiage that's being done in the classroom and then in their small groups. You'll see there's a lot of isolations with letters and words. The teachers keep track, this is an actual lesson plan, and they keep track of all like anecdotal notes of everything that the child is doing, their strengths, their weaknesses. Here's a whole, I gave you the list of like all the rules and phrases. For a closed syllable, it ends in a consonant, and so they turn it into a song. They do a little actual movement with that so that they remember the movement and the catchy little songy phrase.
And this is happening in the general ed class. It's not even just a special reading class. This is in the regular.
Yes, it's
K through
definitely the OG, the tier 2 and tier 3 reading lab, but it's also mirrored.
Okay.
They're because Foundations has the same cutesy rules and information. So that's what's so great about this, and that's happening in the classroom. So that child who needs extra help is hearing it more than once.
I just want to be clear, just because you're recording too, OG is not happening in the classroom, the prescribed methodology for OG. The techniques, because they mirror each other with the foundations and what's happening in the instruction, it replicates, right? So it's not OG happening in a large class, right? But because the program has a connection to the language and the skills are working on, and it's presented in a similar way.
Right, but there's still no universal screening tool or besides teacher observation that's helping identify kids that need the tier 2 or tier 3 yet.
So universal screener is different than the instructional approach, right? So that's identifying, and that's a test that would be used. We don't have a universal screener at this point. If there's an area that is showing through assessments that are happening in the classroom that a student needs more, we would go through the process, whether it be RTI or whether it be doing a little bit more assessments or through special ed, and target that need through further assessment, standardized testing to meet that one kid's need. Do we have a universal screener? No, we don't have a universal screener.
Because I mean, simple questions like, do any of the parents have a reading, have challenges learning how to read? Because genetics, plays a big
Yeah,
role.
we're looking into the universal, like I reached out to Dr. Shaywitz from Yale.
Okay.
So there's this Shaywitz screener. So I reached out to Dr. Shaywitz personally. I got the assistant, they called back, and they're giving me information.
Good.
It's, as I said in my reading presentation at CPAC though, right? You wanna make sure that you have a foundational program, that you can meet it before you do a universal screener, right?
Right.
Because we don't know what the outcome of that universal screener is. Right now, we know through targeted instruction practices and through progress monitoring, what kids need additional supports, and then we're identifying that through, whether it be the teacher information, the testing information, through the foundations, through Pioneer Valley, through inter-reading, through these assessments, the district benchmarks, the STAR, right? So we have data. And if the student is below, we're seeing, do they need additional support? So is it a 20-minute quick or 10-minute quick universal screener to identify if a student has dyslexia? No, but we have means to identify if a student has additional reading needs, and we put things in place for those students.
Right.
The screener is a quick screening tool, right? It's 20 minutes, there's quick questions that they could ask, right? And then it's gonna say probable or not probable, right? So if it says probable, that means, hey, put them on your radar, let's see how they're doing in the classroom, and let's see if they're struggling, right? If it's saying, yep, it's not probable, okay, you go on. But that kids could still have a learning need, even though it didn't come up in the screener. So we need to have the other assessment pieces to make sure that no one's falling through the gaps. So I'm not against the universal screener, it's just that we have other mechanisms that could identify students and we meet their needs, you know? But it's not universal, it's on an individual basis.
Right, well, working on the phonics and the letter sounds and this new approach, I think is gonna help everybody with the reading,
Absolutely.
you know,
There's a
so.
common language, right?
Sure, but it's also learning the basics and, you
Yeah.
know, some of the kids in third grade, fourth grade don't don't hit
Right.
bottom and then start really falling.
No, correct.
Yeah, learning the foundation of language.
It's very important, right?
So Monica?
I mean, there, besides using the flashcards and
Mhm.
the templates, they have, this phonics notebook where they trace, copy, and cover. So here again, the rule is there, apple, they have to trace the letter, they have to write the letter, then they cover these 2 lines, because they have to recall it on their own and write the letter. And here, they can either write the rule, and rewrite the letter again, so that happens for every letter, and then it goes into digraphs, it goes into long E and short E, you know,
Good.
all that. And then you'll also see when they're writing, you know, if they're doing bat, it's, you know, act, and they have to say it out loud. You'll see different movements, tapping on fingers. So it's very multi-sensory,
Mhm.
obviously. It's just, you know, and they're saying it out loud, so they hear it, and they have to repeat everything that the reading instructor says back to them out loud. So it's,
Cool.
and
It's a fast-paced, scripted lesson, you know,
Yeah.
like if you're watching it, and it's routine, right? So the kids are learning that
Mhm.
routine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So at the middle school, just wanted to, we do have the OG reading, like Monica just described, and those teachers have been trained. So we do offer specialized reading support in separate period for students. We have that OG track, we have Read 180, and we have our reading and writing lab. So depending on the need of the child, guidance works to determine what support that student may need. But then for students who it's not specific to that, but we do see that, you know, they're struggling and they need some extra help. That's where our English AIS labs come in, homework lab, summer school, and our after-school ELA support. At the high school, again, we do offer the specialized reading support in a separate period for students who need it. But if they don't need that level of support, again, with guidance and classroom teachers having input and a review of the student's transcript and their assessments, we have ELA labs that students can be assigned to. We have after-school support labs. We have teachers, their professional period is set aside to help students with any type of help that they need. So if a student's in a study hall and the teacher has the professional prep at the same time, the teacher and the student connect at that time. And we do have the credit recovery program as well for those students who really get behind for a whole bunch of reasons that may not be tied to a specific reading issue. And we can help them recover credits in ELA or any of the fours or any classes, really. And then a big part of all this is making sure that we're supporting our teachers and teaching them how to teach our students within these programs. So I think we really talked a lot about OG, so I'm just gonna move down through there, except to say that we will continue, like Anthony said, with another cohort of teachers beginning in 22, 23, and teaching assistants as well. Also, foundations, we have provided training to our teachers, and we'll provide training again over the summer, and particularly those grade 3 teachers, because we're gonna be moving foundations into grade 3. And this year, we did have reading in the content areas. We started that last year at the end of the year. We felt that it was really important that, okay, we know the important elements of a reading program, and what students need, the skills they need to be proficient at reading. But then how does that translate into the content areas, particularly in those upper grades, middle school and high school, but also in our grades 5 and 6, where now we have content specialists, we have the 5+1. So last year, we did begin that training with our middle school teachers. So our science, our social studies, and grade 5 and grade 6 teachers worked with Dr. Cunningham, who's also from Manhattanville, and part of the Rose Institute, which is a literacy institute. And she worked with our content area teachers to teach them about how language is formed and how students can engage with text that they're having a hard time finding an entry point. So she really worked on vocabulary development, really worked on teaching our teachers at those levels about phonics as well, and how to focus a child and try to help them break down a word, and how to get meaning from the text.
So
So,
when she did that training, like when she was with the science teacher, she used science examples,
Hmm.
right? So she would break down and say, okay, here's your base word, here's your prefix, here's your suffix. What do the prefixes mean? What does the suffix mean? What does the base word mean? So then they would, she showed how you can mix and match a prefix and a suffix to a base word. And she made it specific to science, she made it specific to social studies, so the teachers could see and apply it to their teaching when they're teaching the content area. So I stopped in on that on both of them. I enjoyed listening to her speak. I enjoyed listening to how she was giving reading instruction techniques through the content area teachers, right? Because reading is taught through all subjects, and sometimes content area teachers may forget that, but she gave them real life strategies to utilize. And it was interesting because she talked about prior knowledge too, how
Sure.
important prior knowledge is to reading for the content.
so that's it in a nutshell. Any questions? Well, I really want to thank our principals and Anthony for bringing all your materials, Natalie and Monica and Scott. You know, it's not easy to carry everything, but I think it's really important that you see what students see and how we are moving forward with the rules of language and building that capacity with our students, and what that looks like K to 12. So if you have any questions, you can always call us. Anthony's well versed.
Anthony will answer.
Anthony will answer. And we will definitely work on gathering that data for the board and to show the student growth and/or where we still need to build those skills with our students.
But, that data only works if the board understands this.
Well, we would explain it, we wouldn't just. All right. Well, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you coming out.
No, thank you.